Welcome to Sangha Facilitator Training 24. I'm Brother Dave, and I'm so happy you're here. People are still streaming in. How fun. I'm sitting here with a big old smile on my face, enjoying a nice strong cup of decaf coffee. As is my way. Oh. The gata on my coffee mug is guard your mind. Guard your mind. It's so important right now. How easy would it be, right, for me to be super nervous right now? If I was sitting here imagining that I was about to conduct some kind of performance and that all of you were here in some judgment of it, wow, I would have cause to be so nervous, right? Whew. But that's not what's happening at all. That's not what's happening at all. Instead, what we're doing is we're meeting together as a Sangha, right? This Buddhist term, but that is used a lot in mindfulness circles, can be translated as community. It can be translated as community of practice, perhaps. But my favorite translation of the word Sangha is family. Because isn't that what we become? If we're practicing the things that we care about the most in an open and honest and loving way, with generosity, honesty, and kindness, very quickly we become a family. The way our teacher, the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, would say is that this is not an organization, it is an organism. Right? We are all cells in the Sangha body, and together we bring it to life. Together we bring it to life. And so when I hold gatherings like this in that lens, in that light, why would I be nervous? I'm just hanging out with family. That doesn't mean that I'm not experiencing beneficial nervous energy. Right? I mean, I'm awake right now. Right? I'm very aware that 50 to 100 people are about to stream into this call, from all over the world. I'm not suggesting that I trick myself or be in some denial of that at all. But what I'm saying is that I'm leaning into the reality of what a gathering in mindfulness is. I'm not pretending that this is a business meeting or a job interview. No, not at all. Not at all. So as we do, let's begin at the beginning and give ourselves time and space and permission to simply arrive. Let's prepare ourselves for a short period of seated meditation. I like to start with my external environment. Am I warm enough? Can I reasonably expect quiet for the next 10 minutes? Do I have the beverage and the notepad, or whatever it is nearby that I need to be comfortable, to feel safe? is everything that can buzz, beep, and bark silenced to the extent that is possible. Right? It starts outside. And then I bring my awareness a step in to my own body. And I wiggle around, and I get settled into my position. It's a little bit different, my body, every day. I begin the process of listening. I like to have a soft front of my body as a physical reminder in my meditation to meet each moment as it arrives with compassion. Soft front. But I also like to have a strong back in my meditation practice, so that as the moment arrives, I don't get bowled over, and I can maintain my own equanimity. A soft front and a strong back. Mirroring my aspiration for my practice internally, right? Finally, when my body is settled, I come home to my intention. Why am I doing this? I aspire to be alert and at ease. Right? To be paying my full attention and to be at rest. A soft front and a strong back. I have permission to move and to adjust, to scratch an itch, as long as I maintain my mindfulness while I do it. As long as those movements become my practice in those moments. The only rule, if you will, is be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. This period of meditation will begin with one sound of the bell and will end with two sounds. It'll be just about 5 minutes long, and I'll be guiding. Enjoy your breathing. You can even put a half smile on your face if you feel so inspired. To remind yourself that we practice for joy. Breathing in, I am aware that I have a body. Breathing out, I smile in gratitude for my body and everything it makes possible for me. In, aware of body. Out, smiling. Breathing in, I am aware that I am breathing in. Breathing out, I am aware that I am breathing out. In, out. Noticing the wandering mind. By now, if you're anything like me, your attention will likely have wandered away from the raw, wordless sensations in the body of the in-breath and the out-breath. Your attention may have drifted to some story of past or future. Smile at this, at the success in this noticing, and gently but firmly, again and again, countless thousands of times, bring your awareness back to the raw, wordless sensations of in, out. Breathing in, I have arrived. Breathing out, I am home. In, arrived. Out, home. Thank you, friends. Feel free to massage yourselves, stretch out, unwind for a second. Have a sip of some tasty beverage. Well, let me start with gratitude. Sangha, I'm so happy you're here. Can you imagine how good it feels, right? To know that there are this many people. There's, I think, 30 or 40 of us here right now, but there's almost 100 people signed up for the course. Some that couldn't make it this time, or that just wanted the recordings because of time zone conflicts and such. And I'm blown away by how many of us want to take our own practice deeper by kind of peeling back the brown curtain, and looking into the mechanics and the subtleties of facilitation. I can see, knowing so many of you, that I'm already seeing many long-time facilitators and teachers of mindfulness here in a million different forms. And it just really warms my heart to see us all together, to see the tribes coming together and practicing as Sangha. Thich Nhat Hanh, for those of you who might be less familiar with him, is to Vietnam as the Dalai Lama is to Tibet. The late Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh was the premier Buddhist teacher in Vietnam, and he just passed a couple of years ago. I'm wearing this brown jacket, which I call a snack jacket because it has these great big pockets for snacks. But it's more formally known as the jacket of the Order of Interbeing. It's a symbol of my membership in the school of the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, my ordination as his disciple. In other words, I'm his student. And so what I profess to do today, what I'm so excited to begin and to continue this winter with all of you, is to offer to the best of my ability some of the gems of aspects of facilitation that I've picked up over the years in the tradition of the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. I've been studying mindfulness for over 25 years. I've been facilitating for over 15. And I've had some time. I've had the time to make some mistakes, to seek counsel. And I'm so happy that I get this opportunity to share it with you and with everybody I hope will watch these resources in the form of the recordings of these videos that I'm going to be posting on YouTube. And so there, I'll end my thanks to all of you by reminding you that you're doing this service to the Maha Sangha, to the world of mindfulness practitioners, by helping me to create this resource that future folks will be able to watch and learn a little bit more. So thank you. So I want to break our winter up into 3 different parts. Right, we're going to meet 3 times. Now and then on February 24th, and then again on March 30th. Same time, same day of the week. So as I see it, everything we're doing can be broken up into 3 parts: self, Sangha, and society. And this is the order it has to go in. First, we have to establish ourselves to the best of our ability, right? Avoiding the trap of perfectionism. First, we have to establish ourselves as best we can in our own practice, whatever that means, right? Whatever that means. The very first step, of course, being deciding to practice, setting intention. As long as I maintain my intention, I'm not that concerned with the ebbs and flows of my execution. Because on some days, it's really easy, right? I'm walking around in a meditation garden on a cliffside. And it's so easy to be calm and to breathe slowly, to quiet my mind. But most days, it's the opposite, right? And I'm 20 minutes away from a big workshop and one of my technical devices stops working. Right? That experience is more common than the beatific walk on the beach. And so I can't get too wrapped up around the axle about how it goes from moment to moment and day to day. I just have to care, am I still trying? Am I still returning to my practice over and over again? And then as we take on the role of facilitator, in all the different ways that we can do that, as parents, as coworkers, as mindful partners, as mindfulness teachers in a variety of settings, then we are first and foremost helping other people to do exactly that, to de-emphasize the results, anything that can be mapped on a graph, and to just keep them coming back to the heart of their practice, right? To the deep aspiration that got them on the cushion or on the call or in the room in the first place. So for me, that's mindfulness. I'm here because I want to understand mindfulness. I want to be able to practice mindfulness. And ultimately, I want to transcend the idea of practicing mindfulness, and I want to be mindfulness. That's why I'm here. That's what got me out of bed this morning. And so first things first, let's just talk about what mindfulness is. It's a big word. And especially now that it's been bandied about so much in our popular culture, there's a lot of different definitions of it floating around. So let me give you mine. I like to say very simply that mindfulness is paying attention with love. I'll say that again. Mindfulness is paying attention with love. So what do I mean by that? Well, we all know what paying attention means, right? So really we have to unpack the word love. In classic Buddhist thought, love is meant to be the sum of 4 infinite things. That's how huge love is in classical Buddhism, right? 4 infinities together make it up. And those 4 immeasurable minds, as they're sometimes called, are joy, compassion, kindness, and a Pali word, upeksha, and that word in English is actually 2 words, inclusivity and equanimity. If you were practicing physically with me at the beginning when we had our little sit, softening your front and strengthening your back, right? You were practicing a version of upeksha, right? Your soft front was being inclusive, and your strong back was allowing you to maintain your equanimity, not to be bowled over by the openness of your inclusivity. And so paying attention with love means paying attention with a bent towards joy, paying attention as compassionately as possible, paying attention with kindness, paying attention with an inclusivity that is supported by equanimity. This is what mindfulness is. As opposed to, clinical attention, where I might be dispassionately observing a science experiment, or goal-oriented or judgmental attention, like the way I might be supervising someone and saying that this is right and this is wrong. Now, mindfulness is loving attention. Right? It's an attention full of embrace, full of acceptance. It is countercultural, counter to the stream of some of our biology even, because our brains and nervous systems are so hardwired, right, to be seeking the problem and then trying to solve it. And mindfulness is saying, no. The only problem you have is that you think your whole life is a series of problems to solve. So mindfulness invites us to shift a gear, right, paradigmatically, to go from this judgmental, grasping, aversive, like really concerned with outcome perspective on life, and to shift instead to this very internally focused, very loving, very curious, wholly non-judgmental approach to reality. We're doing nothing less than that. We're tweaking the dials of our interface with reality. That's what Zen is. That's what Zen is. So that's a lot, right? That's a lot of little steps already, just unpacking the word mindfulness. And so I'm always looking to simplify things. So lately I've been practicing with this acronym GHK. Go home, kid, is the gata, the poem for practice that I use to remind myself, to GHK. And they stand for G for generosity, H for honesty, and K for kindness. And so when I catch myself holding the moment in any way that is ungenerous, like being really negative about it, being really judgmental inside of it, having a very narrow view that I'm strongly attached to, any of the ways that I could be ungenerous in my interaction with the present moment and the people and things inside of it, or if I catch myself being in any way dishonest, which is usually, almost always internally, right? A little bit dishonest to myself. Or if I catch myself doing or saying or thinking anything that's unkind, right? That's not maximally kind, then that's my bell to go home, kid. GHK, to return to myself, to return to that place we went to at the very beginning of this call, to just come home and check in with my own in-breath and my own out-breath, with my own body, my own nervous system sitting here in 3 dimensions. So our practice comes down to this, right? To the extent that we can transmit mindfulness to other people is exactly to the extent that we are experiencing and holding reality in that way internally. It takes time. It takes time. I invite you, as you go deeper into your practice, not to look back on it in terms of months, but rather in terms of decades. I take a lot of comfort from the fact that I'm a lot more generous, honest, and kind now than I was 10 years ago. And wow, if I go 10 years before that, I don't even recognize that guy. Who's that guy? But if I start keeping tabs day to day, like, that was an unkind thought. Yeah, there you go. Right? Then all of a sudden the movie becomes unbearable to watch. So stretch time there, right? Be really gentle with yourselves. So I want to say a little bit more about how we transmit this, right? Next month, we're going to get more into the nuts and bolts of like how to guide a short seated meditation and how to guide Dharma sharing, two of the essential components of Sangha practice, of community practice in the Plum Village School in the Thich Nhat Hanh style. But today I want to talk about what's happening for us, right? For us, because we don't exactly teach mindfulness, right? We kind of transmit mindfulness. And I want to unpack the difference. So the first thing you want to be thinking about is the teaching, facilitating continuum, as I like to call it. If you're offering mindfulness to other people, even one other, you are somewhere along the teaching, facilitating continuum. And what I mean by that is you are either explaining, describing, itemizing, breaking down into step-by-step instructions, right? Teaching mindfulness, or all the way on the other side of that continuum, you might be just sitting there in silence, right, with them, knowing that you are going to invite a bell in 10 minutes, and them knowing that you're going to invite a bell in 10 minutes. Right? Most of the interactions that you'll have with other people when you're sharing mindfulness will fall somewhere in between that spectrum, right? But it's very important to know at the outset what your objectives are. You don't want to start teaching a bunch of stuff when you'd really be rather just giving people an experience, right? You don't want to fall silent for 20 minutes in a period of our gathering when everybody's expecting you to make a presentation. You have to be aware of this. But there are exceptions. So I want to tell you a funny story. So back in 2013, I was training to become a monk in Thich Nhat Hanh's tradition. And so I got invited to go on the North American tour that when he was alive and had the health, he used to do every couple of years, every other year. And so I got to tour all over the United States and Canada with Thich Nhat Hanh and about 100 monks and nuns for months. And it was a life-changing experience. And one day we were in Boston, and Thai, as we call Thich Nhat Hanh, which just means teacher, had been invited to give a talk by Trinity Church. And so they had built this incredible stage, like on the steps of Trinity Church, this old church in Boston. And on this, if you were on the stage, you were facing Copley Square, like this old, beautiful park. And I would say easily, there were about 5,000 people there, on the grass and on picnic blankets and chairs, middle of the day in Boston. And then beyond, those 5,000 that were assembled, it was, the middle of downtown Boston. Like, it's a very crowded, popular area. So there were, cars streaming by and people on foot, buskers. So there's Thich Nhat Hanh, right? Sitting on a cushion on the stage, right on the ground. And the minister or pastor, I don't know the proper term, I apologize, the head of Trinity Church at that time, was standing at a lectern. And of course, this person was a phenomenal orator, right? And they gave this amazing, bombastic, historically accurate, introduction of Thich Nhat Hanh. It must have lasted like 5 minutes long, And at the end, with a flourish, they said, "And I give you the Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh." I was kind of hiding that day. And so I was sort of peeking out at the crowd, like behind, through the legs of like the 100 monks and nuns that were on stage behind Thai. And so I'm looking at the audience, right? I'm looking at these 5,000 people on this square of grass. And so I got to see 10,000 eyes, like, go from the Trinity Church person to Thich Nhat Hanh. Thai closed his eyes, right? He was sitting cross-legged at the front of center of the stage. He closed his eyes and he sat in silence for 25 minutes. Can you imagine? So I got to sit there and watch the ripple effect, right, of this dharmic explosion, this dharma bomb. So of course there were people there that knew Thai very well, right? There were people like some of the people on this call that are longtime students of Thich Nhat Hanh. So as soon as he closed his eyes, the vast majority of those people were already in some kind of meditative posture, whether they were sitting cross-legged or lying down. And those people just closed their eyes and went right into meditation. And so that was the first wave that went through the crowd. And then there was this second group of people who weren't necessarily like that plugged in, who'd never been to a retreat in the tradition, but who'd meditated before. And when they saw other people, kind of gathering themselves and turning off their phones, they followed suit, And so there was this second wave, like after 3 or 4 minutes, of people who are like kind of figuring it out, like, oh, this might go on for a while, And then there was this third wave, right, where enough people now, maybe half of the 5,000, were in stillness that everybody else started realizing, like, whoa, okay, this is not what I expected. This is not a concert, right? And so those people started putting their stuff down, getting themselves situated, turning off their devices, lying down and putting blankets over their eyes. That took about 10 to 15 minutes. And then there was this fourth wave that was created by the energy of 5,000 people sitting in silence in the middle of the day in Copley Square in Boston. That silence was so loud and it reverberated out so powerfully that it stopped the traffic on the surrounding streets, that the buskers stopped performing, that the people on the sidewalks pushing their prams stopped to look and just let themselves feel how beautiful it is to be in the presence of 5,000 people in their mindfulness. 5,000 people together breathing in the present moment. And then Ty spoke, for maybe 10 minutes. I don't remember a word of what he said because the talk had already been given. And so if you take anything away from what I'm going to offer today, what we're here to collectively understand, remember that as we go, particularly next month, into the details of, this is a good way to guide this, and here's some good instructions for Dharma sharing, and more kind of mechanics. Don't forget what the point of all those mechanics are. The point of all those mechanics is to give everybody a chance to come home to themselves, to what's actually happening, not their story about it, not their drama about it, but just this moment, inhaling and exhaling. My feet flat on the ground. And the easiest, clearest, most effective way we can do that for other people is by demonstrating it. It's by being it. And then no matter what language they speak, no matter what philosophy or religion they may subscribe to, no matter what learning style they have, they'll be able to feel it. And just if this was a choir, right, how it would be easier for all of you to sing an A if I sang one first, and you could sing into my voice just in exactly that same way. That, in my humble opinion, is predominantly what we are doing when we facilitate mindfulness. We're just playing a harmonious note with our own practice in real time and inviting everybody to sing into it. It's as simple and as terrifying as that. Yeah, let's not overcomplicate it. I could say 20 more things, but I'd rather open up a dialogue. I'm going to invite questions now, and I'd love to hear anything about how you're practicing, any questions you might have about your own practice, any questions that you might have about how your practice and facilitation can mutually support each other. The meeting is being recorded because we're trying to create this resource for the larger Sangha. And so be aware of that when you ask your question. Don't ask the most personal question you're ever going to ask me today. But also know for your safety that if we end up having a dialogue now in this meeting that you'd rather not be put on a YouTube video, you can just email me after the call is closed and I'll be happy to redact it. Please use the Zoom interface to raise hand, and then I'll start a queue. And yeah, I'd like to take questions for the next 15 or 20 minutes. So please. We have a couple hands. All right, I'm inviting you to unmute. It's nice to start your question with your first name and where you're joining us from.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Stacy. We can hear you.
Hi. It's nice to be here. I love to see all of you and all the interest in this endeavor. My question is simply, how do you start? How do I start? Like what? How does it? How does it happen? I don't know.
Thank you, Stacy. It's a beautiful question. Mm-hmm. So, of course, right, in the first session of a workshop called the facilitator training, right, you might think that I'm about to respond with some facilitation technique in answer to Stacy's question, but I am not. I'm going to tell you another story. So I have this wonderful friend, old Brian Bogner, incredible man, very deep practitioner. Many years ago, like the kind of guy that'll like rent a cabin in the mountains and go spend a year in it with his cat. You know, like the guy's into the practice. Well, so he told me this incredible story one time. We were hanging out at the Deer Park Monastery in Southern California together. And he was telling me about this job. We were talking about all the different, because we were both middle-aged guys, you know, we're talking about all these different jobs we've had over the years. And he told me about this job where he was essentially a UPS truck driver, but instead of doing it for UPS, he was doing it for this company that was so big. The grounds of the company were so big that they had their own internal mail system. And so he was delivering packages all day, but he was going to these same like 10 spots, you know, on this giant sort of factory compound. So he was seeing the same people over and over again, right? Going to these deliveries. And he really disliked the job. For a whole host of reasons, he was very unhappy with that daily routine. But being a practitioner, he knew, he was like, well, that's on me. Like, how much can I change my side of this interaction with reality? Because we know that everything is positive, negative, neutral, and mixed. Right? That everything contains positivity and negativity. And it's really, our experience has much more to do with how we're looking, right, with our lens than what's out there, because everything's out there. And so he took up the practice of loving kindness towards the people that he was making these deliveries to, wordlessly. And this is the most important part of my answer, Stacy. He never went in there and said, hi, how are you doing today? I really love you. I want to give you some of my loving attention, right? Because we all know how that would have been received. And so instead, he just dropped anchor internally before walking in with that package to each of these locations all day long. He took the time to stop and to remind himself, everyone I see right now when I walk in, I'm going to love. And he started delivering the packages like that. Right? And very quickly, right? Because we can feel this off of people when it's sincere. Right? Very quickly, everybody he was interacting with started asking him questions about his life, telling them stories about their life, asking him for advice, becoming his friend, and on and on and on. Right? But it all came out of him deciding that he was going to ensure that he was paying attention with love every time he interacted with them. And so my answer to your question, Stacy, about where to begin is right there. Is right there. Because if you haven't established that foundation with another person, if they don't have that level of safety and trust with you, and you start talking about the Dharma, talking about mindfulness, it's going to be really hard for them to hear, right? Because you're going to be talking about change. You're going to be talking about things that sound foreign, unfamiliar, unknown. Those things are hard. They're hard for me. And so in order to reduce that friction, in order to open and soften the heart across the table, right, we begin by just wordlessly loving them with non-judgmental attention. I hope that helps. Thank you. We have a hand. I'm inviting you to unmute. Please start with your first name and where you're joining us from.
Dear Thầy, dear Sangha, I am T and I am in Orange County, California. My question is, okay, so first I love the story about Thầy and your friend Brian. They sound like they have very strong, grounded practice. But how does one facilitate or show up for other people when one feels inner turmoil? Like there's a sense of imposter syndrome there. If I'm not strong in my practice, how can I facilitate for other people?
Thank you, T. Of course, this is a question we all have. Right? Every single time we step up to the bell or the mic, we're going to feel some version of imposter syndrome, social anxiety, self-doubt. This is as normal as the rain, right? So that's the first thing we have to do. Right? We have to not fire the second arrow and make that situation of anxiety or self-doubt worse by agreeing with it, right? Because then we spiral, right? And we start telling ourselves the story like, I really don't know what I'm doing. Believe me, nobody knows what they're doing. I have a handful of notes here, and I'm kind of using them. Nobody knows what they're doing. I've been doing this for 20 years, right? But easier said than done, right? To get to this place. And so I hold on to a practice from His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. This was in his book, The Art of Happiness. And it was just a little practice about social anxiety. But the response he offers is so deep that it's applicable to facilitation, it's applicable to everything. And so the Dalai Lama recommended, if you're walking into a party and about to facilitate, and you start to feel some anxiety or insecurity, he said, and this is a quote, get in touch with sincere and primarily selfless motivation. I'll say that again. Sincere and primarily selfless motivation. All right, so let's unpack that. Sincerity or sincere is actually one of my favorite words in the English language, right? It comes from the Latin sinecere, to be without wax. And so back in ancient Roman times, you've all seen pictures of like a large outdoor amphitheater where a play might take place, but the person at the back of the audience could be very far away, or I could be 100 yards away from the stage. And so in order to deal with that, the actors of that time, in those ancient times, wore these enormous masks, like 3 feet tall, on their face. And these masks were made out of wax and had megaphones built into them. So it was easier for the distant viewer to both recognize what character was speaking and to hear the speech. And so to be sinecere, to be sincere, is to be without wax, is to take off that mask and be who we really are. Now, so this is the first thing the Dalai Lama advises in a moment of social anxiety, to be yourself, right? And then the second thing he says is to remember that our motivation is primarily selfless, right? even right now in this moment, right? Am I trying to take anything? Right? Am I accumulating anything right now? Well, I'm offering something. I'm offering something. And it's the same when I walk into a social gathering. I'm not there to take something. I'm there to offer the gift of my sincere presence. And so if I catch myself judging my practice, like, oh, my practice is good enough or not good enough, skillful enough or not skillful enough, long-standing enough or not, right? All these things, all these metrics. The first thing I can do is remind myself that none of that matters, that I'm just offering the gift of my practice. And if there's some flaw or weakness in my practice, if I have clearly misunderstood something, well, how wonderful, right? That I get to express that with the Sangha, with the family, because I'm going to get the feedback and I'm going to learn, right? So there's no negative there. There's no downside to it. Yeah, so that's one way to hold it. One way to hold it is to lean into the truth that your intention is to show up with sincere and primarily selfless motivation. Thanks, T. All right, until somebody raises their hand, I'll tell another story. Oh, we have a hand. I am inviting you to unmute.
Hi, hold on one second. This is Rachel bowing in. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, my question is, like, I find that I get really, like, emotionally moved by a lot of stories. Like, I was totally crying during your story about Thich Nhat Hanh. So if you're a facilitator and you want to do a good job and not be sort of carried away by your own stuff, how do you do that? How do you listen and be there for the other person, but not like be swept away by their emotion and or your own emotional response to them?
Thanks, Rachel. I have two answers. The first answer is just a very practical one. This is what Rachel brings up because it's a reality and not an uncommon one. Spending time with other human beings, no matter what's going on, mindfulness event or not, spending time with human beings is intense. I like that. I'm a very intense human being. That's why I've been a Buddhist monk and a sergeant in the Marine Corps and why I'm sitting here with a smile on my face. But we're not all wired that way, right? Humanity is an intense ride, right? It's a rough set of waves to ride this human experience. And so a practical answer for you, Rachel, is co-facilitation. It's really nice to facilitate with a second body, to lead together, because it's much more likely that one of you will have a stronger response than the other. It's so nice to be able to pass the baton, like, oh, Rachel's going to take that question. So there's a very practical answer that I was given the gift of learning in my own root Sangha, Rock Blossom Sangha in Park Slope, Brooklyn. When you started to learn to facilitate there, you co-facilitated for a year or more with a more senior facilitator. In our Sangha, Rachel, in Sangha Ocean Beach, that's how we're going to be training new facilitators this winter. They'll be co-facilitating with me. So that I'll be right there, when they forget how many bells, or whatever the thing is, But then, because this will be our last question, because I have a few announcements I want to make before we close, I'll give you a deeper answer as well. It's another story I love. So there's this mindfulness teacher. I was told the story by someone who didn't know his name, so I don't know his name. But there was this mindfulness teacher, and he was coming towards the end of his life. And he was suffering from a loss of some cognitive ability, right? He was having issues with memory and things like this. But he was still teaching and having fun doing it. And he was going to give a talk to this college audience. So picture like, big auditorium style university classroom with a few hundred kids in it. And, he goes up there and sits down and gets his mic set and stuff and gets his introduction. And then it's time for him to give his teaching, to give the talk. And his mind just went blank. And he was sitting there in front of hundreds of people under bright lights on a stage with a microphone in his face. And he didn't know why he was there. Wasn't sure where he was. Right? Didn't understand what was going on. But this teacher had been practicing for a really long time. And so deep down below all of the shame and all the feelings that he was having was his practice. And so he leaned into the mic and he just said, "Confusion." And he sat there for another few seconds and he leaned into the mic and he was like, "Embarrassment." And he just did this for a few minutes, just saying out loud all of these things he was experiencing. And then slowly his mind kind of trickled back. He gathered himself, took a minute. I hope he had a cup of good, strong coffee next to him that he could sip to soothe any problem he might have. It's decaf. And he apologized. And he was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Blah, blah, blah. I've been having these health problems." And of course, like half of the people in the room were in tears. They wouldn't have it. They wouldn't accept his apology. They were like, "What are you talking about? That was one of the most beautiful teachings in mindfulness practice we've ever seen. Like, you were just here with us. You were just here with us." So that's another way to respond to your question, Rachel. I've cried plenty of times in front of lots of people. You don't get to laugh as much as I laugh and not cry a lot too. Yeah, it's a gift. It's a gift to get. Thank you for asking. Oh, thank you so much, friends. We do it together. I have a couple of minutes left, and I just want to make a couple of practical announcements. First is I want to reiterate my gratitude. Thanks so much for coming on this journey with us. We're going to have a fun winter together. And if you have any difficulties or any questions, you all have my email. Just email me and let me know how you're doing, and I will respond. Maybe not that day. I don't exactly keep corporate email hours, but I'll get back to you. I'm going to email sometime next week the edited version of this video, and it's going to be also up on YouTube so that you can all help this project and share this resource as widely as you can. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your sanghas, share it with your coworkers. That's part of why we're doing this. And on that email will be a link to a resource page. And I'm going to have all kinds of fun resources on there for you. Books I recommend that you read this chapter of, or this selection in, videos to watch, homework basically. And then it's up to you, if you want to put in a couple of hours a week from now until when we see each other again on February 24th, you'll go through all those resources. And you'll be that much more prepared for what we're going to talk about then. But maybe you don't have the time for that right now, and that's okay too. Grab what seems interesting, and then you can always go back and look at them again. That page is going to be up forever. In session number 2, we're going to focus more heavily on the mechanics, right? Remember, self, Sangha, society. So in February, we're going to focus more on the mechanics of facilitating a short meditation and facilitating what we call Dharma sharing, or a type of sharing practice that's unique to the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition, and I've found beneficial in pretty much every environment I've been brought into. I've done Dharma sharing with everything from teenagers in a high school to Vietnam vets. It works. And it's a cornerstone of Thich Nhat Hanh's practice. So we're going to focus on that. And the last thing I want to say is, every Sunday, including tomorrow, at this time, right, this same hour, Sangha Ocean Beach meets. And this is a Sangha that I helped found 5 years ago in San Diego that is now online. And so we meet just like this and practice very much like this. We sit together for 5 or 10 minutes. Then a talk is given by me or a guest teacher. And then we have a period for question and answer and this Dharma sharing practice that we're going to talk about more. And so if you have a question that you want to ask me in the next month, come on Sunday and ask it then. If you want to go a step deeper and see myself and others practicing facilitation in this style, hang out with us on Sundays and you'll get to see it firsthand. So that resource is there for you every Sunday. Thank you all so much for your practice and your presence and your sharing and your listening. I'm grateful for you. See you in a month.